All right, so ever since Joe Biden announced that he was going to be doing a withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I do that in quotations because obviously it's not going to be a complete and total withdrawal. I've talked about this on my channel. He's likely going to be leaving a large number of mercenaries on the ground, as well as our covert presence through institutions like the CIA on the ground there. So it's not going to be a complete withdrawal, but yet he still does get a good amount of credit for what he is actually doing and removing most of our boots on the ground troops from Afghanistan. Now, even with this half-measured response, he's been getting a massive wave of propaganda in pushback against this withdrawal coming from outlets like Fox News and conservative politicians, as well as Democrats and, the nominally left news outlets like CNN and MSNBC, which still represent pretty much the same exact interests. And now we have a new character who is joining this choir in calling for us to remain indefinitely in Afghanistan, and that would be the single least qualified source in the entire world to speak on this issue, George W. Bush. So what does Bush have to say about this withdrawal from Afghanistan? So Bush calls Afghanistan withdrawal a mistake and says consequences will be unbelievably bad. I wonder if they could be even close to as unbelievably bad as entering the war in the first place. Listen, whatever George W. Bush says that we should do on a foreign policy front, I am inclined to believe that we should immediately do the exact opposite, okay? This is a guy who, if you know anything about his track record, is responsible for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of deaths of innocent civilians in Iraq and Afghanistan, the wars that he started in the Middle East. They destabilized the Middle East. We've been staying there for multiple decades now. As Joe Biden actually accurately points out in the rhetoric that he's been using, we now have sons of fathers who fought in these wars are now going to fight the same wars, and for what? I mean, what have we actually achieved? Well, let's go ahead and listen to what George W. Bush thinks we can achieve by actually continuing to stay there. So, former President George W. Bush on Wednesday called the U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan a mistake and predicted that the consequences, especially for Afghan women and girls, will be unbelievably bad. Quote, I think it is, Bush told German news outlet Deutsche Welle. When asked if the withdrawal is a mistake, I think the consequences are going to be unbelievably bad. The 43rd president launched the war in Afghanistan, America's longest war, and also most unpopular war in modern history, even less popular than the Vietnam War, when he sent U.S. troops to Afghanistan following the September 11 terrorist attacks. And Bush's comments are especially notable, as he has typically been reluctant to criticize his successor's decision-making, and they come at a time as the Taliban advancements in the country and fears of a wider security breakdown. Bush voiced particular concern for what could happen to women and girls in Afghanistan with the U.S. troop withdrawal. Quote, I am afraid Afghan women and girls are going to suffer unspeakable harm, Bush said. They are scared, he added. And then he also went on to talk about some of these Afghan interpreters that we have used and apparently are leaving behind. So first and foremost, let me just break this down and dissect this, okay? The Afghan interpreters that they referenced down here that were allied with us and helped us in these wars, we absolutely should give them the right to come to the United States and become American citizens as promised, okay? There's absolutely no reason, even though it was completely fucked up that we started the war in the first place, these people that helped us, they don't deserve to just be left behind and slaughtered by the Taliban, okay? So that's first and foremost. He's right about that, but that's the only thing that he's right about. Well, actually, he's right about another thing, but in a completely different way than how he is portraying it. So is he right that Afghan women are going to suffer if the Taliban is able to fully regain control of the country? Yes, that is an inevitable consequence of what is going to happen when we withdraw. But what he doesn't say in this is that the implications of his position on this issue is that us staying in Afghanistan for, 20 more years again, is going to solve that problem. That's not going to solve that problem, okay? We cannot just go around invading, illegally occupying indefinitely every country around the world that treats women in this a similar way. For example, we are currently allied, and we were allied with, under Bush's administration, Saudi Arabia. Did Bush ever say that we should invade and occupy Saudi Arabia until they give women equal rights? No, of course not, because it's not about that, okay? And that's what I want you guys to understand. They are weaponizing identity politics. They are weaponizing this type of rhetoric against the left in order to try to make it some, woke position that we should stay in Afghanistan and do perpetual war. And by the way, on behalf of these women, by the way, George W. Bush alone is responsible for the deaths of how many hundreds of thousands of women, innocent women in Afghanistan and Iraq with these wars that he launched. This man does not give a shit about women in the Middle East or equal rights for women in the Middle East. The point is that going to be an inevitable consequence? Yes, but that's not our responsibility. That's not why we went into the war. The implication of how he phrases this is as if we started the war in Afghanistan to go liberate women. That's not why you went in. That's not why we stayed there. That has nothing to do with the calculations militarily of why we have been in Afghanistan. It's for resource control, for trillions of dollars in mineral wealth in Afghanistan. It's for geopolitical reasons to combat China and Russia's advancements in the country. That's what it has been the entire time. It was never about liberating women. Okay, so when he comes comes out and he portrays this in like as if he's coming at it from an identitarian leftist position, this is just complete horseshit, okay? He's trying to weaponize identity politics against us so that we stay in a war indefinitely. And again, the solution that he is putting on the table here of us, whatever, staying in Afghanistan forever is not going to solve that problem anyways. The Taliban right now is stronger than when we started the war in 2001. So what exactly is your plan to, eradicate them, defeat them? They're a standing guerrilla army operating in their own country. We're not going to defeat them, and they've gotten, again, stronger the entire time that we've been there. So we're not going to defeat them, we're not going to subdue them, we're not going to prevent them from gaining territory. So what exactly is the solution that you are putting on the table here in order to liberate Afghan women into the future? He doesn't have an actual plan, okay? So he's just talking out of his ass, and this is a strategy that we have seen over and over and over again from the mainstream media recently with this pushback against Biden's withdrawal. So again, this is not even going to be a complete and total withdrawal. We are still going to be operating with CIA forces and other covert and private mercenaries as well. So it's not going to be a complete withdrawal. Biden does get credit for what he is actually doing right now with the withdrawal that he is doing. But I mean, listen, whatever George W. Bush suggests on a foreign policy front should be not only ignored, but should be laughed out of the room. And honestly, all the rebuttal that you need to have to some George W. Bush even mentioning Afghanistan and Iraq is this dude should be in prison, okay? This guy committed atrocities. This guy did torture programs. This guy massacred innocent men, women, and children all over the Middle East. So if anything, this guy not only should not be able to be giving his opinions on whether or not we should be withdrawing from Afghanistan, but he should be tried. I mean, he should be tried in international courts for the war crimes that he is guilty of.